Welcome everyone to the virtual book launch of the Aphorism Club by Tracey Lee. We're very lucky to have Tracey here with us today to answer lots of our questions. I'm Sinead. I was part of Tracey's publishing group, and I'll just start by reading her bio and then we'll dive in. So, Tracey Lee is a prolific writer whose stories are praised for their addictive storylines and keen observation of human behaviour. Following a distinguished 38-year career in English and behavioural science teaching, Tracey now spends her time on the far south coast pursuing her lifelong love of writing. Congratulations to you, Tracey. How are you feeling?
Thanks, Sinead. Look, I feel really proud of the book. I think, like all writers, when you launch a piece of work, or an artist, anyone who's in the creative arts, you feel a bit anxious, whether or not people are going to like the book,
Yeah.
or it says what you think it's saying. But by and large, I feel really good and very. I'm so happy with my experience with yourself and Jess and Hembury Books. So thank you for that.
No, thank you. It's been an absolute pleasure, and every part of your book is stunning and gorgeous. So thank you for letting us be part of it.
Thank
Speaking of, can you
you.
tell everyone listening what your book is about?
Well, the book is about a young woman called Ruby Pearl Hart, who was born in Melbourne in 1910. And it is about the life that she lives trying to establish herself as an independent woman. She has been born under difficult circumstances into quite a wealthy family, but a family that doesn't really know how to love her or doesn't know how to identify how important and special she is. All they see is the fact that she's been born with a birthmark on her face, and they think that is the defining uh, trait of her whole life. But she spends the next 20 years of her life proving them wrong.
Mm,
And she finds her people in many ways.
mm, which is important. I'm sure we all go through that in some ways, which is why it's such a good read. I'm sure everyone sees themselves in her a little bit.
A
Um,
little bit, yeah.
yeah, in different ways. What prompted you to write it?
Well, it started really as I was thinking about my own ancestral line of women,
Oh,
my mum, my grandmother, my great grandmother, and those stories. And, I was listening to myself and others complain about how difficult it is, for women in the 21st century. And it is. I'm not saying it isn't perfect, but for the women of the past, it was an unbelievable struggle. And I wonder if we might have lost some of those stories or
yeah.
lost the appreciation for how complicated life was for young women, particularly at the turn of the century, where there was so much promise and many promises made to women, but they didn't really filter down to the coalface where women were living their lives.
Mm,
So I thought maybe writing a story about that intrinsic social struggle as well as the personal struggle might resonate or might rekindle that interest in the journey women have taken over the past
mm,
century, really.
yeah. And do you think it's important for women, beyond remembering the stories, important for them to kind of learn something from the stories of those women?
Absolutely, because we are the product of the survivors.
Mm,
We are the product of the women who did the hard yards, made decisions, incredible sacrifices.
yeah.
And, we actually can learn so much about, well, history is about that. We learn to be our best selves and to make better lives because we can look back and say, well, how did they do it?
Yeah.
And I just feel that is such a powerful part of what it is to be human, let alone what it is to be a woman.
Yeah. My God. Speaking of all of that, how did your career in English and what was it behavioral science teaching shape this book? And maybe
Well,
even history a little bit. Yeah.
yeah, look, as a teacher, particularly, well, in all the subjects I've taught, I always use the anecdote. I've always told stories
Mm,
to illustrate a point. I
yeah.
think sometimes things become clearer or they're more real for learners if it's a true story.
Mm,
So I've always used that sort of storytelling element you know, in my work as a teacher, but also in my writing, obviously.
Mm.
I think too there's that sense of watching the lives of people unfold and some of the spectacular mistakes they make, you know, and just sort of uh, learning from that, just saying, look, you can overcome this, encouraging young people to sort of not dwell on the failure, but to dwell on the lesson that comes from it. I mean, I love that saying, you know, sometimes you win and sometimes you learn
Yes.
rather than you fail, you know, and I just think there's a real power in that. And so I think you know, all my teaching years really focused on that of helping young people say, well, yeah, I'm in the doldrums at the moment, or a really difficult thing has happened, but there is a tomorrow.
Yeah. And do you
You can
think
get
that
better.
that's, something that Ruby herself does, as well as obviously your book teaching us to do that?
Yeah, I think so. I think Ruby is very much a fall and get up kind of character. You know, she's wounded in many ways, but it is the people around her also say to her, you lay down and give up.
Mm,
Don't be ridiculous. You know, you have a gift and you must fulfill that gift.
mhm.
And so I think, you know, her lesson to us is that if she can do it, we can all do it.
Yeah. Yeah,
Mm.
she's really is surrounded by as many people that encourage her as she is by the people who kind of try and put her down.
Yeah, absolutely.
So this is your first standalone book, but you have previously published 3 in the Lily O'Hara mystery series.
Mm.
How did the process of writing this book differ from what you've gone through before?
Well, it is a little bit different because it is also a history
Mm,
fiction. So, you know, there was a bit of background I had to do. But with the Lily series, I'm so familiar with Lily. You know, I know her
yeah.
so well. So this was a bit of a journey of discovery, getting to understand the nuances of Ruby. And I know people think that writers have it all worked out. We know exactly how the character's going to unfold. But in actual fact, it's like getting to know
Anyone?
any person.
Mm,
She evolves as you write more about her. So it has been a process where I've almost like found a new friend, basically. I've just tried to come to understand her and how she's responding, and how I wanted her to
mm.
respond.
Do you picture her beyond the end of the book as you would maybe a friend that you leave behind, or do you just
Absolutely. You know, I at the end of the book, you know, it ends the way it ends,
yeah.
but I'm not a writer who ties up all the
Mm,
loose ends in any of my books. There's always not that I'm setting up a sequel, but I'm saying that's real life.
yeah.
There is a tomorrow.
Yeah.
We probably don't know what it's going to be, and it may not be a very neat package,
Yeah.
but it opens the way you determine it to open.
Yeah.
And so that's how I see her stepping into this new world she's going to be in.
That's lovely. And so true. Those are my favorite books, the ones that leave you with just a sense of the uncertain and but the possibility too, possibility and uncertainty of the next
Well,
thing.
well, hope is such an important element in human
Mm,
existence. I
yeah.
think without it, we live quite miserably.
Yes.
Yeah,
What
and
how do you do each day without
yeah,
it?
well, I'm not sure I
No.
could.
Yeah. That's not a question we can answer, right?
No.
Big. Um, why did you decide to make Ruby a writer?
Well, I think because I've always found writing a really important thing.
Mm,
You know, in teaching, I'd often say to kids when things were happening, write it down, put it on paper. It helps you make sense of things.
yeah.
And it really does. Sometimes if you write down a problem, it really doesn't seem like much of a problem at all.
Mm,
And I think for Ruby, because she is so crushed as a human in the beginning, writing allows her to explore the things that she's feeling,
mm,
you know, explore the things that don't make sense to her, you
mm.
know, like love. It
Yeah.
doesn't make sense. She doesn't understand it. She hasn't seen it modeled for her.
Mm,
So she writes because I think it empowers her. It gives her the voice that she actually hasn't got in her everyday life.
Yeah.
And then, of course, as she becomes more assured of herself, her writing strengthens as well, and people listen to her.
Yeah.
It becomes a voice of her generation, really.
Yeah. Wow. So I assume in that case you would probably encourage us all to do some form of writing, regardless of, who sees it, but
Absolutely. Write for yourself.
mm,
Yeah. Or write to publish. But, you know many things about yourself when you write. You learn many things about yourself, and it's a very powerful thing to do.
mm,
And for me, and may not come across, but I'm actually quite a shy person, and I sort of live my life in my head. Um, but writing allows me really to explore an enormous amount of things I think about and ideas I have and concepts that sometimes don't work,
yes,
when you get them on the page. So it's a powerful thing.
absolutely. That was one of the lessons I learnt during my, university days is that
Mm.
you write it and then sometimes it doesn't work, but you still,
Yeah,
like you said, you are, what is it? You win or you learn.
you win. Yeah, sometimes you win, sometimes you learn.
Yep. I love that. It's good. I'm going to write it on my wall, keep it forever.
Well, it's a little aphorism for you.
Oh, perfect. Yeah. Which everyone should know now because it's in the first, I think it's the first page of your book you've given us what it
Yes. I
just
thought a definition was important.
the English teacher in you felt the need to explain. Fair enough. Um, so female beauty plays a really big role in this book, and obviously, particularly through the symbol on Ruby's face,
Mm,
the birthmark on Ruby's
mm,
face.
mm.
What did you want readers to take away from this?
I think beauty is such a complicated subject.
Mm,
I mean, I think it's twofold. First of all, it is such an individual thing. It's so subjective. What one person sees as beautiful, another doesn't.
mm,
But over the top of that is always this social expectation of what is beautiful.
yeah,
And I think the more media has played a role, the more we have been crushed into a very narrow
mm,
perspective of what beauty actually is. But the reality is, beauty is not necessarily the thing you see in the mirror.
yeah,
It's the million other moving parts.
yeah,
The who you are, it's how you treat others, it's the values you hold, it's the courage you display. And for Ruby, initially, this birthmark, she thinks is the definition of not just her sense of self, her beauty, how she looks, but in fact, the very essence of who she is.
yeah,
And she has to come to learn to let that go. And one of the things I hope people take away from that is not just that, oh, isn't it great that someone with a face like that, has success, but that when we all look in the mirror, we don't see the thing that we think is negative,
mm,
that we see the thing that is truly who we are.
yeah,
And that is not about the fact that your eyes are too close together or your
yeah,
hair doesn't work or you don't know how to put on makeup or your face is too fat, too thin, whatever it is. But we look in that mirror and say, really, I have a place in the world
yeah,
and I'm a good person and I am making a difference. And that is a beauty in and of itself.
yeah, yeah. Hard for people to recognize, I suppose. Matt, do you think that it's harder for women to recognize that kind of beauty because people put so much stock in the physical kind of beauty for women?
Absolutely.
Mm,
And I think it is for young men as well.
yeah.
There is this terrible sense that we have constructed this vision
Mm,
of what it should be. And I was going to say, I think about 2% of us might be that, but I'm not even sure it's that
yeah.
because it is such a construct. It's not real.
Yeah.
So I think in some ways we have been punishing women and particularly young girls
Yeah.
and now young men by trying to crush them into this narrow pathway that actually doesn't exist.
Yeah.
Not there. It's not real.
Real. Yeah.
So I sometimes think, why are we doing makeup tutorials for 10-year-olds? Seriously, have we lost our minds?
Yeah. It is ludicrous.
Mm.
Oh, I don't even I don't go down that road. But yes, that
Mm.
is a bad sign for us all. But hope remains.
Hope does remain.
talk about it. More people hopefully talk about it and recognize that kind of deeper beauty. Maybe.
Yeah, I hope so.
Yeah. One of the parts I liked in your book, a quote, I guess you call it, was that at the newspaper Ruby worked at, one of her colleagues says that women are excluded from the real stories about accidents, financial crises, and
Mm.
criminality, and yet these women also want to write about the stories that no one wants to know about. So I was wondering, do you think there's something special about the way that women approach stories and the people, real or fictional, behind them?
Um, I think there is. And it's not probably that I think women are more emotional and therefore there is a greater connection there. But I think women are experiencing those things, whether it's loss or suffering or brutality or poverty.
Mm,
And at the same time as experiencing them, they're trying to raise a family, trying to work, trying to be good people,
yeah,
trying to make a difference. So they're juggling all of those balls. And it's not when they write that it's more emotional, but I think it's more empathetic.
yeah,
I think there is a deeper understanding of the human story.
mm,
The example I'll give is the terrible tragedy that happens to the young woman that they write about.
mm,
When the story is written in the newspaper, it is written from the point of view of fact.
mm,
This happened, that was the outcome.
yeah,
What Ruby writes about is why did that happen in the first place?
yeah,
And how can it be prevented from happening in the future?
mm,
So I think it is really about the power of empathy
yeah,
that a female writer might bring to these types of stories,
mm,
not just the soft, you know, emotional
yeah.
perspective, but that sort of deeper human perspective.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. That ability to juggle lots of things and understand different lives. I'm sure you would say, that's not to say men can't do that, but women have that.
Mm.
It's kind of in there the
Well,
way they.
it is probably inbuilt. I mean, we don't like to sort of say these things, are sort of instinctual, but
Yeah,
I think if a woman has raised a family,
yeah,
struggled financially, lost her partner, been abandoned, all of those sorts of things, she's the person to tell the story.
yeah,
You know what I mean? She is understanding it from the grassroots level,
yeah,
not just the academic level.
mm,
And look, there is a lot of power in being objective when you tell a story, to stay out of the story
yeah,
and report only the facts. But often the story behind the story is a really strong one.
yeah. Mm, lovely. Um, this your book is, as you've mentioned, set in a very particular time and in a particular place.
Mm.
What was the research process like when you were writing this?
Well, it started a while ago. It started really when, I grew up in Launceston, which is where the second half of the story is told. And the place called the Gorge and Duck Reach have always been two places I've absolutely loved, and I've loved their history. And so I went probably 5 years ago, maybe 6 years ago, to the Launceston Library and went through their resources there, the beautiful historical photos,
Mm,
the newspaper stories. And I get really caught up in all of that stuff. I just, really enjoy just looking at the world as it was, particularly through photographs
mm,
and some movie vision as well, film vision. And I then got into looking at, well, that's the physical place. What were people wearing? And then you do all the fashion, which is really interesting. You look at, well, what diseases, what food were people eating? How did people actually maintain their lifestyles? What were people reading in the day?
yeah,
And then, really importantly, who were the important movers and shakers in those days, particularly for women?
mm,
Who were the main spokespersons for women in those? So there was a lot of research that took me away from the writing for a bit because I got
mm,
so, enamored with finding out this information. I mean, it's important to say this is not a historically perfectly accurate
yeah,
book. It is fiction. But there are very strong elements of of history in it.
Yeah.
And it was great. It was great fun doing that research,
Mm.
particularly the fashion stuff. It was just amazing. You
Yes.
know, the-
Speaking of, I know I was part of this process, but with the cover, how important was it for you to get the fashion and the kind of style of this woman right?
well, it's the thing that the style is perfect.
Yeah.
The extraordinary thing is the way she looks at you from the cover, the intensity of that look.
Yeah.
And when I picked it up the first time when you sent me the proof of the cover, I was taken by the fact that it actually looked like my mother as a young woman. And I really was stunned by that fact because I know the graphic artist hadn't seen any images of my mother as a young woman. So that struck me as quite amazing. And an elderly relative on Saturday night said, when I gave her the book, she said, "Oh, she even looks like your daughter," which is my daughter, which is this extraordinary combination of factors, in this beautiful image on the front of this book.
Wow.
And I love the color of it. I love that the typewriter is there.
Yeah.
I like the fact that it speaks to the era, and I think
Yes.
that's captures perhaps an interest.
Yeah. I mean, it's stunning. I love it as well. But that is very spooky that it looks like your mother and now your daughter.
It's a bit spooky. It's what people see, of course. It's what people interpret. Doesn't necessarily have to be an absolute fact, but yeah. But it is the intensity of that stare off the page that I
Yeah.
think I like the most.
Yeah, she certainly draws you in.
Mm.
Importantly, what is next for you?
Well, I have set myself the task of writing 20 books. I'm four in. So I've already started the fourth in the Lily series.
Mm?
So I'm about, I guess, 10% of the way into that.
Wow.
I have planned the fifth of the Lily series. So I've got a sketch outline for what's going into that. Plus, I've given titles to both of those books. Plus, I've got a pretty detailed plan for a second standalone book, which I'm thinking I'm going to call At 30.
Yeah.
And it speaks a little bit to the Ruby story because it is about 10 generations of women of my family, but it'll be a fictionalized version of
Yeah.
that, right back to the First Fleet convict
Oh,
female, Elizabeth Fitzgerald, and telling the stories of those 10 generations of women when they turned 30.
oh my gosh.
So an exploration of what life was like in those 10 generations.
Oh, that sounds amazing. And it sounds right up your alley. You'll get to do personal and I imagine some archival research for that.
Mm. And a lot of that has been done. I know each of the ancestors by name and basically their lives and where they were and some of the things they did. There is even some newspaper articles about some of the
Wow.
women, and this is I'll just throw this in. I didn't know I had a First Fleet convict ancestor.
Yeah.
And I did not know that her headstone, that she was actually buried about 20 kilometres from where I grew up in Launceston.
Really?
And I've only just found that out last year.
Wow. Have you been
So
since?
it was really big. And it did, of course, prompt the thought that I would write this book.
Wow.
30. Mm.
Oh, inspiration all around you. That's awesome.
Well, everything's an inspiration for a writer.
Yeah. We
Look
like
out.
to. Yeah. Well, congratulations to you. I'm sorry I can't show your whole cover. Oh, there we go, almost.
There we go.
Um, Congratulations. It's amazing. I look forward to hearing all about your launches and how it goes, but I hope you're proud of it.
I am, and thank you again to yourself and Jess and Hembury. I'm really grateful.
Oh, we really, really, really loved it. We hope you come back with one of the 20. Thanks.
Thanks, Sinead. That's wonderful.